Welcome everyone to our board meeting of the Sunny Meadows Nursing Facility. Everyone has been given a board packet. You have that in your handouts as well too. Like any other board meeting, board members get a board packet with the agenda, minutes, all the documents that will be discussed as well today. We have planned 3 different times at which we're going to stop action during the board meeting. And as a facilitator, I'm going to stop action. We're going to freeze at that moment in process and discussion. And we'll spend about 5 or 10 minutes during each one of those stop frame moments doing a little debrief of the board meeting at that point in time, as well as just asking some questions about what would you have liked to have said or asked had you been a board member up here today. And so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to the president.
I would like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone. This is the monthly meeting for the Sunny Meadows Nursing Facility. Today is October 27th, 2017, and I'm calling this meeting to order. I would first like to start by doing a roll call. I'd ask that each person state their name and what your position is for the record, please. I'd like to start with Harvey, please.
Okay, I'm Harvey Osmond. I'm the Director of Maintenance.
I'm Alexa Martinez, and I'm not a board member, but I'm here as a guest. I'm a marketing representative.
Hello, I'm Betty Busey, and I'm a board member.
Hello, I'm Debbie Arms, and I'm the treasurer of the board.
Sarah Strominger, President.
Ann Stelter, Secretary.
Leslie Holdsome, I'm a board member.
Karen Bailey, I'm a board member.
Deborah Young, I'm the administrator of the facility.
Tara Henry, I am the quality officer.
Thank you. We have 9 board members, 6 are present here today, so the quorum is established. The first item is the Secretary's report. Ann?
Yes, I have the minutes from the Board of Directors meetings on April the 25th, 2017. The directors present were Sarah Strominger, Deb Arms, Ann Stelter, Emmanuel Banks, Leslie Hodson, Karen Bailey, and Deb Young. Those absent were Mary Ann Patterson, George Anderson, and Betty Busey. Guests were Elisa Martinez, Tara Henry, and Harvey Osmond. The meeting was called to order at 1:01 p.m. by the chair, Sarah Strominger, when the quorum was established. The Secretary's report was provided by Ann Stelter on the minutes from February 28, 2017. Minutes were approved. The motion was by Banks and second by Bailey in a unanimous vote. The treasurer's report was given by Deb Arms on the organization's financial status as of March 31st, 2017. The average daily census fell slightly from 95.4 in February to 89.8 in March. Rehab admissions remained slightly behind target at 10 admissions per month. Skilled admissions met budgeted numbers, and residential living patient admissions reflected a decrease of budget by an average of 5 admissions per month. Profits were less than anticipated by $13,500. Balance sheet reflects the increased liabilities related to the increased professional service fees. Old business. First, there was the marketing report. The marketing representative, Alexa Martinez, provided an overview of the facility's admissions by type for the period ending March 31st, 2017. All admissions down from planned targets, with the short-term rehab care admissions showing the most decrease in admissions, down by 16 on an average daily basis. All local hospital case management departments notified of availability of open beds. Literature left with physicians' offices. Not one, more than one. Planning to do face-to-face visits with physicians starting next month. An open house event is being planned for early June. New business, quality report. Tara Henry presented the organization's 2016 quality report. Work on the compliance program is currently focused on the continuing development of policies and procedures, training and education, and auditing and monitoring. Current work on policies and procedures has been the HIPAA privacy and security, contracts and business associate agreements. Training and education is now integrated into the new employee orientation program. Next, maintenance report. Harvey Osmond, maintenance director, provided the board with an overview of the current building maintenance needs. New carpeting needed in the lobby, and currently there are 2 windows leaking in the activity room when heavy rain occurs. This past month, a broken door hinge in room 19 required a new door placement. Both lawn mowers will need to be serviced to prepare for summer mowing. New carpet replacement estimated at $1,500, and windows repairs estimated at $600. Motions to approve the windows received. Harms motioned, second by Hobson, and unanimous vote. The administrator's report. Nursing home administrator Deb Young presented a report on quality of care. She discussed the work that had been done to reduce the prevalence of urinary catheters. Ms. Young reported a marked reduction in the percentage of catheters over the past few months. A major component of the success was due to the collaboration with the medical providers. Staffing update. Ms. Young informed the board that an assistant food service director was hired and started to work on 1/17/17. The director of nursing position remains open. The social services director has notified management of a pending relocation out of state at the end of January. The facility still has 1.5 open part-time PT positions and 2 PTA positions open. The recruitment bonus of $1,000 is to be offered. Several ads placed in regional newspapers. There was a board member discussion regarding specific operational issues with suggestions for improvement in dining, hiring practices, and the use of agency staff. Hearing no other business, the meeting was adjourned at 2:20 p.m.
Thank you. Any additions or corrections to the minutes from the last meeting? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
Was that Leslie?
Yes.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. Thank you. As you look on your agenda item, the next agenda item is the financial report. You should have a copy of it in your board packet. Please refer to the financial report. Deb, would you like to speak to that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I will be summarizing the financial report of the period ending in 5/31/2017. If board members have questions, just let me know and I can respond to those. In terms of our revenue, we have lots of variances. Our year-to-date budget is $61,500, and our results are $44,589, which gives us a variance of $16,911. In the skilled care, we have a variance of $13,650 from our budgeted amount. And in the rehab area, we have a variance of $11,085 which is based on what our year-to-date budget is. If you look to the right, you will see that a lot of this has to do with the planned bed occupancy, where we had 9 full in residential, but we planned on 12. We had 18 full in skilled, and we planned on 14. And the rehab is really pretty good. We had planned on 58, and we had 56. Excuse me. So our year-to-date budget was, in terms of revenues, was $219,945, where actual results were $178,299, which is about a $41,646 variance. Our direct costs also had some variances, and you can see that our year-to-date budget is 43,500, whereas we actually only spent 32,180. And again, this has to do with open positions, especially in the nursing and the STNAs, as was reported in the minutes from last month. So you can see the variance totals there. In terms of indirect costs, I really will speak to just some of the unusual variances we have. You can see the bad debt. We have 2 insurance accounts that have caused a variance of $3,566. The new windows and doors from building maintenance, we had a budget of $7,000, and as you noted in the minutes, the last minutes, we approved those being replaced, so that caused a variance of $1,800. In terms of IT, we had a budget of $13,500, and we needed some new updates, so there was a $4,156 variance there. We've had to have some contract services, which have, for physical therapy services, which has caused a huge increase from what we had budgeted, based on the kinds of patients that we have. So when you look down at the totals, we have total indirect expenses of 35,000, of 195,491. Our budgeted was 159,950, so we had a variance of $35,541. Our total expenses were year-to-date were $227,671 with a budget of only $203,000, so our variance there is about $24,221. So we, if you look at our profit and loss statement, we are not doing as well as what we had budgeted. And so we have a variance of $65,867. Does the board have any questions about this budget?
Madam President?
Yes.
Could I just clarify one thing? When you mentioned the bad debt, I believe you said 3,566 was a variance. I believe it's 4,100.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong line.
And I have this in hard copy. Did you send it electronically to me?
I didn't, but I will.
Will you please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If you go to the next page, we can look at the assets. Our current cash assets are $162,794, down from 2016. Our receivables are $653,632, which is also down from 2016. Our inventory is $3,095. That's down from $3,500. And we do have a family grant this year for $2,500. So our current assets are $840,078, which is down from last year, which was about $1 million. Property and equipment, the building is $861,294. The fixed equipment is $96,000, and the movable equipment is $723,496. So our total building equipment is $1.6 million compared to the $1.3 million last year. Our accumulated depreciation of that equipment is $461,903. So our net property equipment is $1,218,902, which is up from last year. So our total assets are $2 million and some change, as opposed to 1.9 million from last year. So in terms of our assets, they're really the same from 2016 to 2017. In terms of our liabilities, accounts payable, we have 117,995. Our interest is 28,749. Our salaries are 229,334, with our current liabilities being 376,078 compared to last year, which was 285,023. Other liabilities we have are, we have a note due to McCready Foundation for $402,322. Our mortgage is $756,621. So our total liabilities of other liability is $1.1 million compared to $23,911 in 2016. So our total liabilities are $1,535,021. Our net assets, the unrestricted, are $521,459. Our restricted is $2,500 for a total net assets of $523,959. So the total liabilities and net assets are $2,058,990 as compared to $1,955,816 from last year. Does anyone have any questions about this balance sheet? It seems like there are some significant liabilities, but there's also some significant increase in value of property and equipment, which makes the difference and causes us to really have a bottom line that looks very similar to the year before. Madam President, if anybody from the board doesn't have any other questions, that's my report.
Thank you.
Just for record keeping, you'll send this entire thing to me electronically, correct?
Yes.
Could you also please put line items beside that? I have a little trouble sometimes when you're reading it, finding the numbers.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
I make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that motion.
Is that Leslie?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Treasurer's report approved.
If you're participating in this meeting, as you heard the information being shared, you have your packet of handouts. What questions would you have liked to have asked, or information you would have liked to have known from anything you've heard so far?
It's my understanding that the board does not approve a treasurer's report, but accepts it and has it placed on file. Is there a difference?
Different boards act differently depending on how they manage a consent agenda and what they're used to working on. There are some boards that won't vote and have motions on the secretary's report. We'll vote to have it approved as read, or filed as read. There are occasionally those boards that may or may not look for a motion of approval. Many of them do look for that, an understanding of approval of the contents, what is shared with that. So part of your own board's culture and look at how they're working. If you don't understand something, why there's motions not being made, why a vote was not being taken, it's time for you to have a discussion off the board, off that time, with either a peer, the board leadership, or that administrator to talk about that board process and why that may deviate. Something else you would like to ask a board member? Yes.
Yeah, I was noticing in the minutes where they were talking about a bonus to be offered, and I just didn't know if there was clarification at the time that they had the meeting. Was there a set time frame for being employed before you collected that bonus?
If you weren't at that last board meeting, if you were unaware of that action, you may have wanted to have a conversation during the reading of those minutes just to ask for some clarification. I see a notation here that some bonuses were put into place and agreed upon. Do you mind sharing with me some parameters of those, perhaps? Now, be careful, because you don't want the board to repeat all their work from a previous meeting just to keep you up to date when you couldn't be at that meeting. And so you do want to have information that's valuable to you going forward. So you get to kind of monitor that a little bit. It's not meant to be your total orientation document. But if you have questions that are bothersome to you, that you need some clarification on, ask the board, and that board will either answer them or apprise you to talk after the fact or after the meeting. We can discuss that further in depth. What other questions would you have liked to have known?
I would like to know what the note due to, what is the foundation and the mortgage, what is that from?
Okay, so a very big assessment people in picking up and looking at that. She talked about that, but she didn't give us any details about that. There were very few details about that in the minutes as well, too. But as you're assessing the organization, hearing that conversation about the treasurer's report and looking for how does this compare to what I'm seeing or not seeing, some big open-ended questions. There's a huge mortgage that wasn't there a year ago. They're paying interest on that. There's huge equipment purchases that weren't there the previous month that they're now have as well as their liabilities. So looking at those things that are outliers that didn't exist before, or differences from a previous period perhaps, to understand those if you're not familiar with why that happened and why those things were taking place. What else? What else did anybody see? Jane.
My question would have been about the restricted funds. Even though it's only $2,500. There was none last year, so I'd like to know, what does that mean for this year?
Absolutely, great question. We didn't talk about earlier restricted and non-restricted funds. Restricted funds are given to you and you can only use them for a certain purpose. In this instance, the organization got a family grant of $2,500 that was given them by a family member to purchase some services for residents going forward. So a question about something that appeared, what is that? Why is that? Brand new information to me and I wasn't made aware of beforehand that now I'm seeking some information about. Anything else before we move on? Continue this session. All right, you're back in session, Sarah.
The next item of business is old business. I would like to call upon Deb Young to give a report on the declining admissions.
Thank you. We have had some downturn in our admission rate. And you'll be hearing from Alexa later about opportunities to remedy that. Some of that has been a result of new competitors entering the market, and it's just increased competition as well. So we are poised to do more marketing for ourselves, and some of those things you'll see that Harvey will report on improvement-wise are all efforts to make our facilities more attractive. And you'll also notice we are doing particularly well in the rehab side, where there's some opportunity additionally to perhaps expand into an outpatient arena versus all inpatient rehab. Some of the equipment purchases we've done have been in that thinking that way, where we can build revenue in that manner. It's not affecting our average daily census because those are not residents of ours, but that now that we have this new space and some new equipment, feel that that may help offset some of the skilled care downturn we've seen.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Deb? The next item of business is new business.
Yes, I do have a
Oh.
question.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead, Leslie.
Yes, if you're thinking about increasing the rehab, looks like we're way down with physical therapy. How would you address that?
Well, we haven't gotten there yet, but in my follow-up report, in my actual administrator's report, we've actually filled all of our physical therapy positions. And we don't need to use contracted any longer, so.
Okay.
we have-
That's good to
That's an
hear.
excellent question, though. Thank you.
Good to hear.
I need clarification. Did you provide a written report
I did
on what
not.
you just did? Could
I-
you please send that to me electronically?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
The next item of business is new business, and the first report will be the marketing report. Alexa?
I'm looking especially at average daily census and admissions. The average daily census in the residential area, and again, this is an average for this reporting period, was, the average was 9, and we had planned for a daily census of 12. In the skilled care, the average daily census was 18, although we had planned for 24. That's a wider drop. And in rehab, we averaged 56 out of 58 planned for. Again, those are averages. And on any particular day, we could be full, and any other particular day, we could be not full. So the admissions were down from the planned targets, with the short-term rehab care admissions showing the most decrease, the greatest decrease, with the census down by 11 on an average daily basis. We have made visits to 3 area hospital case management departments to let the case managers know that we have all levels of beds available. We've continued to drop off literature at area physicians' offices, and we're planning to do a face-to-face with physicians starting next month. The open house event planned for June has been postponed due to budget constraints. That completes my report.
Any questions for Alexa?
Madam President?
Yes.
Since we are decreasing, or not going to be doing the open house event because of budget constraints, how do you feel that'll affect our budget when we start doing face-to-face with physicians? Is that going to be covered with, under advertising? So I know that we still have a positive perspective on that line item. So do we anticipate that that'll be taken care of under that line item?
That's a good question. So let me just make sure I'm understanding. You want to know, with the budget constrictions, there's no open house, and the advertisements to physicians, you're wondering to know what item of the budget that will come from?
Yes.
It's a great question. I will refer to the board if that has been in decision before. I think that's a new concept for us. I don't believe that's part of the advertisement budget, but I guess we could clarify that.
Madam President,
Yes.
to answer your question, we haven't budgeted for that. And if you look at the advertising budget right now, our budget is really $10,000, and we're, that's the year-to-date budget, and right now, we're over about $3,500. What I would propose, given we have some other variances, is that the Finance Committee meet to look at where the variances are and make some recommendations for some budgetary adjustments.
Thank you.
Madam President, I have a question too. Last month, it was reported in the minutes that we were going to start those physician visits next month, which would be, and then Alexa, you just mentioned that you're going to start them next month. Could you maybe explain the delay?
Again, it was a matter of budgeting, as far as I can understand. And also, the the literature, the drop-off literature, we wanted to make sure that that was current and up to date. And so in order to make sure that we got really good-looking literature, not just a handout, we wanted, so that has delayed our start with a physician face-to-face. We didn't want to just go in, drop off stuff and leave. We really wanted to have a conversation.
Okay. Do you plan to start those then this month?
Yes, this month. I believe the new literature will be ready.
So what I hear is that Deb will work with the Finance Committee and look at the variances as far as budget proposals. And we will wait to hear when the material is finalized and go from there. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. We're going to move to the next item. You have a report from the Facilities Maintenance Director, Harvey Osmond. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. We had the 2 leaky windows that were in the activity room, and they have been replaced at a cost of $645. So those are replaced, and we are not having leaks anymore. And I think that might have been a little bit over what we had budgeted for that. We also requested funds to replace the carpet in the front lobby and in the family areas, and the estimated cost for that is $3,500.
I am not comfortable with approving a $3,500 expense until the Finance Committee has had a chance to meet to look at budget adjustments. If you look at repairs and maintenance line, we've only budgeted $2,500 for repairs and maintenance. And that will put us $3,500 over what we budgeted. Now, it is true that, there are some trade-offs because it looks like all of the physical therapists have been hired, so we won't be having any contract services. But I'm not willing to make a motion to that effect until I've had a chance to meet with the Finance Committee, unless other board members have some other suggestions.
As part of our basically introduction to families and potential clients who are seeking our services, we do run tours regularly, and it was noted by many families coming through that they were not positively reacting to that particular carpet area, so that was what the impetus for the request is. It was more as a direct result of our feeling our need to make it as attractive as possible to drive some more interest in our facilities.
Do you think that that had an effect on the families choosing this facility?
That was the sense we got when we were getting the tours. So I just wanted to add that additional insight into the request.
Madam President, how bad does the carpet look?
I would like to ask the facility manager if you could speak to that, please.
Well, there's no carpet in the patient care areas, so that's just really in the entrance and in the family areas, and it's pretty well worn. It really does need replaced.
Thank
So
you.
that's the only carpet that's
Yeah,
there
there's
that
no,
doesn't
yeah,
look?
just in those 2 areas.
Does anybody else have any other comments? It looks like Alexa was able to confirm as well that the tours in the past 3 weeks, none of the families have chosen our facility. She told me that earlier. And it may be potentially causing an image with the visitors.
Madam President, should we maybe consider replacing the carpet with the same flooring that is used in the other areas of our facility, rather than put that carpet? Seems like this might help avoid replacing that in the next 3 to 5 years. So it might be an outlay cost, but in the long run, could end up saving us money.
It's a good thought.
How much will that cost?
I don't believe we've ran a quote on that because I think we were just originally looking at the carpet.
Well, I am so glad you brought up quotes because I don't have any estimates on file. Are you maintaining those, Treasurer?
No, I'm not. It would have to be facilities.
Did you
We just had
complete those?
The one quote.
Could you please send that to me electronically so I have a copy of that for the record?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Can I ask for a motion for approval for the request of the carpet to be replaced?
Madam President, I
Yes.
move to approve the spending of $3,500 to replace the lobby carpet.
Well, I second that motion. That
Okay.
was you, wasn't it, Betty?
Yep,
Yes, it was me.
Betty, yeah. Any other further discussion? I would like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have 1 and 2. All those opposed say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And 2. Did you vote?
I abstain.
You abstain.
The last time we kicked off, we were on old business, talked about declining admissions. The administrator gave a report. We heard about the marketing report, and we heard of requests from facilities for some money for carpet. You're the board members now. What questions do you have? What more information do you want to know? Kathy?
Well, we talked about, we had Karen talk about maybe doing something that would be more long-term, like replace it with the normal flooring. And there was very minimal discussion. And then there was a vote on the carpet. It was like they just sort of disregarded your request, which I thought that was strange. And you seconded the motion for the carpet, and then you abstained. So I'm really confused.
So lots of questions about the conversation. Someone raised a very important point. Well, gosh, if everything else doesn't have carpet in all the patient rooms, it's well maintained, maybe we should consider putting hardwood in the main lobby as well too. A very viable and good suggestion that got very little consideration, very little time spent. Could have had all kinds of long-term potential rewards and savings, but they didn't really give that any conversation. Someone went ahead and raised a motion. Someone seconded that motion real quick. They took a vote real quick like that, and it was passed and it was done. And so the opportunities can go real quick sometimes to raise those questions. Your opportunities to exist for questions obviously before the motion is made, after that first motion is made, after the second motion is made, there'll be requests for conversation or comments. It's your chance to say again, I really think maybe we should have listened to or asked more questions or considered getting an estimate on this alternate route before the vote's taken. Otherwise, it's been done, and for you to interrupt that after the fact is going backwards when decision has already been made. So listen astutely, listen to what's going on, and if you see something happening real fast like that, okay, understand that you may have to slow it down just to raise some thought processes if you have questions. This is the first time we had some yes votes, some no votes. And going back and looking at parliamentary procedure and Robert's Rules of Orders. What happens when you have tie votes? Typically, the president breaks a tie. President doesn't typically vote. The president will break a tie sometimes. And understanding what abstentions means in those votes as well, too, and how that works. What else did you see? What else happened? Jane?
I wonder if there was a policy that says you needed to have more than one bid for a job, and why wasn't that a bid filed someplace instead of just kept in the facilities manager's office?
Yes, great questions. You'll see our secretary asked for evidence and documentation so she can support what materials the board's making decisions on. Versus, it's not just Harvey saying it now. I have the bids. I have the documentation that supports what we made a decision on. So she's going about making sure that all that exists for the record keeping as well too, ensuring that. And you had a part too.
I'm a board member, and I say out loud, "Oh my, that was such a quick decision." Is there any way we can go back and reconsider that vote?
Mm-hmm. that's a challenge for a group to look at and consider. You're testing the waters at that point in time. Is anyone else as uncomfortable as I was with what just happened? Would anyone else like to back up the tape, do a rewind, because this happened so fast I couldn't process it? You may find that the group is already on board and doesn't want to go backwards, or there were enough folks that similarly that wanted to present a brand new motion to have a conversation to not put that into place, but to follow parliamentary procedure to reopen that discussion at another level. Yes.
Yeah, so what you saw happen with me when I spun on a dime on changing the vote from I support the motion was all of a sudden I don't have the evidence on file to show me that this is okay. I'm abstaining because I can't support that unless I know it. And you're new. I don't know your name. You know, she's new. I'm just trying to get it down.
Absolutely. And you ask a good policy question. Does this organization typically get bids? What is our process like? I understood that you have one bid, and we're talking about whether or not we want to use that one bid every bid. But a general question would be, is this our typical process? Do we typically get bids, and then are several bids presented to the board to look at and to be considered? Just a little bit of information. We work really hard to keep the boards out of the operational weeds. Okay, the board may be approving some monies being spent, and the purpose of those monies, but determine how, who, where, and when all those things happen is operations. And typically boards don't get involved in that level of detail. They'll get involved in very high-end detail and let staff worry about the implementation, the resolution, and the follow-up to the directions they put in place during that meeting.
Left to my own devices, I would have moved that this question be taken up at the Finance Committee and then be brought back to the board for reconsideration.
And when your treasurer says that, that's very powerful. Okay, your treasurer says, let's dive down, let's look at this, let's have just those folks working at that, spend some time and understanding that. And typically treasurer's advice is very well respected in the area of monies. We didn't respect it this time, but traditionally they do get a lot of respect for those type of requests to dive down deeper into financials.
In that same vein, would that require a board vote to do that, or is that the treasurer's responsibility to say, like if we had actually paid attention and gone that route, would that have required a vote to?
No, executive committees of the board do not require. They are operational whenever the president, the executive director feels that committee needs to be called. Many meet on a routine basis as well too, but that's not an official motion or action of the board. That's an operational decision that we need to step back. We need more information. Let's take it to the committee. The committee then will bring it back through to the treasurer for the board for consideration again.
And that's why I said what I said right at the beginning.
What else? Anything else?
As a new board member, if I'm sitting there and I'm just a new board member and they're going over the issue about the carpet, and if I felt like I really thought that, wow, this should be approved, and they made the motion so quick and it was done, I just feel like I would want it more on that, well, why? I mean, as a new member, I wouldn't want to be sitting up there saying, well, why?
Yeah.
Is that, is that appropriate? How
Yeah,
do you know what's
it is appropriate because you're sitting as a brand new member, you're hearing brand new things perhaps. So from the standpoint, you don't want to hold the board back from going forward, but you'll be able to participate. And so it is fair to ask that question. Help me as a brand new board member understand the importance of this carpet and how you're going to manage a declining census and its role in that and the cost and all that. Help me just put my arms around that just a little bit more so I can understand how important this is or is not to the organization.
That's true, and even after a motion is made and seconded, there should be a call for any further discussion. And so even though it's been moved, you still have an opportunity. You're right.
And people get stuck in the rules that they're in. She's concerned about, are we getting to the next agenda item and has the vote been taken place? I'm concerned about writing things as the secretary. I really wanted to push you and ask you, without getting into operations, how many doctors are on that list? Have there been printing costs? How many, you said you went to 3 places. What 3 places did you go? Were they convenient for you? But there's some nitty gritty stuff that you can't get into. But had those questions been asked, maybe it's not about carpet. Maybe it's about our spending pattern. Maybe there's something more going on that we really need to get to the root of. And you're seeing those red flags in the discussion and in the votes, but in the treasurer's report. And so, you know, people get stuck in their roles. There's a whole culture that goes on with it. So the new person, it's a great opportunity to ask
Absolutely. Use your
questions.
naivety, use your newness as long as you can to ask those questions. And Ann brings up a great point. You know, if you're a part of the executive committee, which means you're an officer of the board, okay, you're pretty much in the mindset of fulfilling my role of responsibilities, leading the meeting, understanding the treasurer information, going through all that. And so the value of being the board member who, you know, who's not a part of the executive committee is that you can listen to all this fully. You can really connect, see the big picture. And many times they're very in silos about their performance and their own role perspective. And so board members have the opportunity to hear all that without that baggage of that role responsibilities as well too, which makes it even more important, more valuable to the discussion. As a board, it's not our decision or obligation to say, who are you seeing, how often are you seeing, how often are you going out, what literature are you taking them, are you seeing the right docs? That's not a board's responsibility, that's operational detail, that's the administration and staff responsibility. We're looking at outcomes, we're looking at results, we're looking at our goals being met, or the organization's objectives being met. How they choose to do that is operations and the administrator's responsibility.
I do want to say too that it's so important when you are on boards or members of any committee is that you do show up, because some of this conversation could have been cumulative from a couple of board meetings a while ago. And so we had that information, so we knew that perhaps he had 3 bids and this was the lowest or whatever it was. So just keep that in mind too.
Excellent points, excellent points. Anything else you want to add? Cheryl?
You did say that there were 6 voting members, but only 5 voted.
The president didn't vote.
It
So what
was
do you-
6 board members present to establish the quorum. And then as Terry said, the president normally does not vote. Go ahead, Terry.
No, she's exactly right. They'll look for that. But the president's included in the quorum count, okay? But the president's vote is for ties, okay? The president's vote is for ties. So had it been 2-2, okay, or 3-3, we would have looked for our president to jump in there and to have voted and to break in that tie. Absolutely, you're correct.
And that's also why it's really important to have a rudimentary understanding of parliamentary procedure. You can get a Robert's Rules of Order book at any bookstore, and you can get the shortened version, and you can get the quick version, and you can get a one-page version. But you should at least know how to make a motion, that you don't make a motion, you move something, and that you second something, and then you call for discussion, and then you take the vote, and then you can go back and undo something, but there's a process for doing that too. So if you are involved in any kinds of boards at all, bring yourself up to date, or take a course. You can take a quick course on parliamentary procedure, just so that you know how things go.
Are we ready to re-engage?
Our next item of business is the quality report. I would like to call on Tara to provide us a report.
Thank you, Madam President. Sunny Meadows had an unexpected visit from ODH because of a follow-up from a family member complaint. The overall, it was a successful survey. No findings were directly a result of the complaint. The following are a list of secondary findings from the survey. Patients who were deemed as elopement risk did not receive updated photos on a daily or on an annual basis. Due to some turnover issues with clinical staff and the continued DON open position, not all the clinical staff employment records were updated or completed. Appropriate supporting lift equipment not available to all staff. And appropriate personal protective equipment was not easily accessible to clinical staff or patients who were in isolation. This concludes my report, Madam President. And also in your packets, you'll see the Medicare Nursing Home Compare report from May 1st of 2017 of the overall quality measures and our ratings.
Thank you. Any questions for Tara?
Well, could you talk a little bit about your below average ratings?
Yeah, what we had received, some of the complaints were the leaks that had gotten fixed. They did comment on how shabby it looked when they first walked in. The blinds and the carpeting, everything just looked dull and outdated. So maybe with the repairs, that'll kind of improve a little bit. But as you can see, we were average with staffing and the quality measures. It was just all the incidentals basically needed improvement.
Well, I also see that the staffing is average and the quality measures are average. Do you have any kind of a plan for really improving these ratings to above average?
Yes, actually, we have a group that we have comprised of staff members and management, and we're going to go and kind of really dive into some ways to improve this. So we have a committee going on that.
Do you have a timeline?
I hope to meet with them this week so that we can actually maybe get started with something next week.
Thank you.
I have a question on this compare report. You mentioned down here that they're performing below the threshold. Is there any way on further future reports we could see what the thresholds are?
Yes. Yeah, I'll bring some charts and graphs.
I think that would be helpful to be able to tell what you're aiming for.
Sure will.
Thank you.
And I'll send it electronically.
Thank you. I did receive this electronically, but the new graphs with the
Yes, I
thresholds,
will.
if you could send those, I really appreciate that.
All right, thank you. The next item is the Board of Health survey from April of 2017. I call upon Deb Young to provide that information.
So the bulleted points, we have immediately upon these findings, these were not, how can I say, they were really secondary. They didn't want detrimental findings, but we wanted to address them anyway. So the patient's photographs, we didn't have a solid process for who was responsible, whose job it was to do that. It's supposed to be updated on an annual basis, so we've put a process in place now. The individuals who are responsible know who it's supposed to be. Similarly with the employment records, and I'll be speaking in the human resources section about the open director of nursing position, but we have pulled together all of the clinical supervisors and given them directives and expectations to help fill that gap, since it has been an extended time frame that we've been without a director, to make sure that employment records are up to date. And then regarding the lift equipment and the personal protective equipment, really this was just a situation where we did additional education for staff, and also had it wasn't obviously marked in some of the areas of our facility where these things were stored or should be replaced back to. So we created some signage and some actual guidelines for folks to be able, so it would be easily accessible, and put into practice an isolation cart that could be moved around. It's relatively infrequent that we do have residents who are in isolation, so we don't have them in every room because it's not cost efficient to have that equipment there. But we have created carts that can be moved when it's necessary, which is a new update. So I just wanted to give the action items as a follow-up to that.
Great.
Madam President?
Yes.
I would like to ask you a question. Even though these were secondary findings, is there some standard with the ODH that we need to have a response back to them about all of these secondary issues of how we are rectifying them within a 30, 60, or 90-day plan?
Correct, that was what that was.
Doing. Okay, thank you.
So all of those things I elaborated as part of that action plan, and we have 60 days to.
Will be some digging into all that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a concern. Are these quality indicators and the results of the survey posted for the general public to
Yes.
see?
They are.
Well, I'm wondering if, without any kind of an explanation,
Actually, clarification, the ones, I'm sorry, which ones? The bulleted point
bulleted
ones,
and-
or the ones that are the quality
Both.
measures? So the ones from our survey, the bullet points are not. That is individually
But-
reported to us, but the prior page in the report,
Mhm.
yes.
well, I'm wondering if this, some of this, the results are being viewed by our public and is a detriment to why our census is not where we'd like it to be.
It's a reasonable concern, absolutely.
And so, what are you doing in those areas to get that up so that we have a more favorable view of our facility?
That's what Tara's pulling her group together to do.
Okay.
So again, the director of nursing position remains open. We have a contract in place with an executive recruiting company, and 3 candidates have been through the preliminary interviews with myself, but they all declined to continue on with the process after the initial interview. We have considered a sign-on bonus, in addition to the finder's fee, but again, that would have impact on the budget, so that would be something we would have, that the board would need to address. Also, after speaking with the 3 candidates, it's potentially a salary, doing some market analysis, it's potentially a salary issue as well, so that may be something that may need to be looked at in why they decided not to continue with the interview process. The former social services director left February 1st, but the position was filled March 13th, which was within 45 days. So that position is filled. As I mentioned earlier, all of the physical therapy and therapy assistant positions have been filled after the institution of that sign-on bonus, so that was an effective strategy. The assistant food service director, who we hired in January of this year, did tender their resignation effective immediately in May after an incident with another food services worker who actually has subsequently been dismissed, and that position remains open. But the assistant, it's an assistant food services director, so it's both the responsibilities of that position are being managed by the director. And our use of agency staff has increased by 5% since the beginning of this year, which does add to the poor performance already highlighted in the financial report. Just finding adequate staffing has been a challenge for us. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Deb?
Well, I'd just like to say I'm really concerned about the whole operations. I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get this organization up to full capacity and full quality care, which is certainly being affected. We can see that all of these issues play to the problems that we're having with our budget.
Madam President, I would agree with you. I think both of these issues are very concerning, and I don't know as a board if we should have an additional special meeting for them to come back with their solutions to these qualities and where we're at with the candidate for nursing. It just seems there's a lot of work, and I don't know if we can spend another month without an additional updated report, because this is significant for this organization.
It sounds like I'm hearing there's concern with the operations. Does anybody have suggestions or wants to make a motion of some sort?
Madam President, can I make a motion that perhaps the board meets in 2 weeks again with the presence of the human resources and the quality outcomes, just to give us an update on where they are with their action items for all of these?
Well, I second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, I certainly support that motion. I'm wondering if we need to, when we do meet again, look at our strategic plan and, remind ourselves what our goals are and where we are with those goals. And we may, I can also have the finance committee meet between now and that meeting, so we have a pretty good idea of where we can shift dollars, if at all. But I think that we really need to be clear about our goals and objectives and in relation to these issues that we're having right now.
I would agree with that.
Deb, would you be able to provide us the strategic plan documents for the next board meeting? So we would be able to discuss that? Thank you. So what I hear, we have a motion still on the table with a second, and that is to have the board meet in 2 weeks again to discuss the human resources and quality concerns that we have. So if there's no further discussion, I will call for all those in favor to say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you.
As we've talked about our quality report, our Board of Health survey, and we heard a report from the administrator. What questions were going through your mind during all of that? Kathy?
Well, when I first looked at the report, the overall was below average, or overall ranking at 2.5. Then I took a look at health inspections, and I don't know if that's been addressed at all when it comes to this under health inspections. Is that cleanliness? Is that how you store your medications? Is that, how people dress? What is health inspection that's below average? That hit me like a ton of bricks.
Okay. So information on the data was brand new data, had questions of how the data was arranged, how it was scored. So you could interpret whether this was, a good, fair, poor report card, if you will. So understanding what you were looking at and how to interpret that. Yes.
The liability of the board members is what jumped into my head when they're talking about somebody had a fall or something there. Who's going to get sued? Wasn't there something about a patient injury or something? What was
No.
it?
That's why the health department came out.
They were out on a complaint survey.
It was not a fall.
Oh, just a complaint about,
The board does not have direct liability for what goes on in the walls of that organization. They have directors and officers insurances that protects them for decisions that they have made that could be detrimental. But things that happen in the patient care situation, now the organization may be at risk, okay, if they're found faulty or negligent in some way, shape, or form. The directors and officers insurance protects the board members from any personal involvement in any kind of those risks or liabilities should they come forward in that regard. Okay?
Yes.
You had said earlier about not asking the marketing director, like, who was she going to see, because it was operations. But they did that to the quality person. They asked her questions. How are you going to fix this? What are your plans? What are you doing? Was that wasn't supposed to happen?
What the board was looking at here was there were some obvious quality issues, and trying to find out what's being done to address those quality issues, trying to get a feel for how those may be affecting admissions or declining admissions in the organizations. And so asking some questions about what are you doing to improve these? What are we what's happening? What's your plans in order to make, ensure we get better outcomes on that? That is an appropriate question. What you don't want to get into is figuring out telling what they should and shouldn't do. Well, you should be doing an audit. You should be seeing physicians and not this. I think you should be doing these kind of things. You're going to look for them, what are their responses to doing that, and then to be able to evaluate overall organizationally. But you don't want to create the work, tell them how to do the work, but asking questions about the work, what directions the work is taking, where's the work in process, okay, are all fair game. Are all fair game.
The distinction is, if you have low, and you brought this up, that's what Debbie brought up, if they're low scores, is that affecting our ability to recruit new clients to our organization, and or does it put us, as far as reimbursement, all of those things that this goes to all that kind of measure. So to me, that's the distinction a little bit too. It's not just why aren't you doing your job right, which, whatever, but what's the impact on the success of the organization as a whole?
And this board obviously has some questions. They've called a couple special meetings, okay? They would be different from their regular and usual board meeting. They want to focus, one, on the finance committee and just drilling down in some issues with finance and understanding what all that looks like, okay? So they can share that with the larger board as well, too. They've also called a special meeting of the board just to talk about quality outcomes, just to talk about, our getting ourselves back in ODH criteria, because all those things are made public, okay, in one way, shape, or form to potential residents and their families. So they've called a special board meeting to engage in that. You don't see that happen a lot, okay? You might see special groups called in, or you could see folks asked to, I'd like for you to bring back a larger report. I'd like you to bring back more detailed report. Could you bring your quality officer with you next time? And could you discuss specifically and lay out your plans for improving these 6 measures that are below the threshold? So asking for that type of report and information to come back to a next meeting is perfectly appropriate, so you can understand, because it's part of your job. It's your organization who looks like this from a quality perspective. Okay, and how many of you want to say that I'm on the board of this organization, and guess what? Every one of their quality metrics are not doing well. You can't change them yourself. You're not responsible for them, but how can you make sure and lead others and direct others folks who are doing that to make sure that they're acting responsibly and in timely as well? Yes?
I think one other thing that I didn't hear brought up, but would be something that would be good to come back to your special meeting, would be vacancy reports and or turnover reports. Is this a cultural shift from an employee standpoint that you're experiencing, and which is driving the lower quality scores?
Sure. You got turnover. You've got agency staff coming and going. We've got open leadership positions, people coming and going. So all sorts of assessment data that go together to get a figure for, how can we best help this client, this patient, this organization, and all the types of needs that they have, and thinking about all of those on a holistic basis.
I think performance over time too would have been beneficial, because it could have been 1 month of poor performance where generally. Yeah.
So there's no relevance to that. You don't know if it's ongoing or if it's always been like that. So you don't know if it's a dip or if it's been just people that have not paid attention on an ongoing basis. Very, very relevant comment. Jerry.
This looks like a pretty crummy place to work right now, with altercations in the food services and the social service person leaving and a variety of other positions that are empty. It's not the board's responsibility to build that culture, but I would, if I were on the board, I would look as the board president to the culture of the board. Does anybody ever say anything? Does anyone ever question anything? If not, perhaps you need to reconsider who's on the board and get some people there who are thinking people, who are questioning, who are wanting to make this place the best place in the world for patients to come. It's the director of nursing's responsibility to build that culture of safety and the culture of enjoyment. You should like to work where you are, and for the patients to live there. But I think it is a board's responsibility to have an equal say in its own membership. That if you're going to be a policy-making board, you want policy-thinking people.
And the board is the decision makers. The board hires the executive director, the superintendent, the administrator. He or she then hires the staff that are working at that. So they are operationally responsible for that individual and that organization. And if they're not providing the leadership necessary to advance the organization in a way that the board feels is they need to be doing, then they're talking about leadership. They're talking about, do we have the right leadership in place, okay? And that's a whole different level of conversation that happens in a whole different way of discussion. But in looking at not going in and fixing the problems, but do we have the leaders in place who can effectively address those issues and fix those problems on behalf of the organization?
I think one of the gaps on this board membership is legal. I wouldn't probably be asking some of the questions that I would be asking. I would direct those to legal, saying, how deep do I need to go on documentation? Because there's a problem coming here. You can feel it coming, and should we have it on record or shouldn't we have it on record? And I'm asking, somebody else to repeat, what do I put down here?
And usually an organization has received some guidance, okay, about the detail offered in their minutes, because minutes are made public record, Okay? And so many times you won't see the nitty-gritty of all the details and decisions and who voted what and all of that. You'll see a very roll-up discussion, very simplified discussion oftentimes in the meetings that doesn't really reflect the length or amount of dialogue that went into some of those decisions oftentimes. Okay? What else?
That the board has a responsibility to evaluate their performance. And if that hasn't been done, as a board member, you could say, have we done that? Is there a way we do that?
Absolutely. Evaluating the performance of the organization, whether it's a strategic plan, evaluating whether we're meeting a strategic plan, whether we're on target for that, evaluating the finances, and are we managing according to finances, evaluating leadership. The board president, board executive committee does a personnel evaluation for the CEO or the administrator and evaluates that position, offer his or her direction in that regard. And if there's any guidance or counseling in regard to change of direction, changes in performance, it comes through that board leadership and that board leadership team to direct that organization. So they are responsible for the organization's outcomes, but they're not directly involved in themselves making it happen on a hands-on basis.
Well, the one thing they are directly responsible for, and which I would, at this point in time, request is a personnel committee of the board, which discusses the performance of the executive director. And, depending on when her last evaluation was, you can do a midterm evaluation. You can request feedback from a variety of different places about her and put her on a performance plan, which is under the purview of the board, because the board actually does hire the executive director.
And they have all those responsibilities. She's just outlined for that CEO or that administrator, and then he or she has that responsibilities for all the staff that he or she hires and works with from that point going on. And so whether executive committee, whether a personnel committee, a committee of the board designated to do leadership evaluation on behalf of the board, and share that with a larger board, that is their direct responsibility, is the responsibilities for that administrator. So a great way if you see things that can happen. If you might see your own boards taking this direction or calling a personnel or a special meeting or an ad hoc meeting to talk about a certain subject matter that you want to delve in deeper. Boards can do that and oftentimes will do that if they think they need to be special concern and attention given to a certain subject because they don't want the whole board going through that and offering it so they can get some expert advice and opinion and then back to the board. Other comments or thoughts about the process or discussion so far?
I have something to say.
Yes.
So this group made a decision that looks like we're sweeping the problems under the rug. I mean, think about, doesn't it come across that way? And so you kind of have to step back and go, what have we been doing? What message are we sending? And that's exactly how it looks.
Absolutely. There were lots of areas that we would like to have had, oh my gosh, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about this. And are they concerned enough about that? Are they asking the right questions? I have been on boards who shake their head yes to every single thing. Okay, she will get better next time. Okay, they will do better. Okay, they will do this. Okay, they will do this. And I do it every single meeting. Okay? At some point in time, someone needs to look and think about the organization. We've been talking about the same thing for 3, 6, 9 months. We've made no forward progress. Should we be concerned about that? The organization, is it suffering? What kinds of ways have you assessed the organization? Is it finance? Is it staff? Is it quality? Okay? How's the organization faring through all that? And you can see the symptoms start to arise. And looking at all those things, and the more and more symptoms, the more and more problems that crop up, as you saw all the way through here, makes you have some concerns, perhaps, about the leadership of this organization, the things that they're making, and you clearly see now how much they need you, okay? How much they need you to be involved and ask some of those great questions that you're just not comfortable with in what you've heard today.
I just wanted to say that I thought that you had said early in one of the earlier sessions that it was a good idea to determine whether there was any liability insurance stuff, that it wasn't an automatic given that any board had liability insurance.
I think it's a question any new board member should ask before you consider a board. Does this organization provide directors and officers insurance? Okay, D&O, directors and officers insurance to board members. Okay, and if the answer is yes, okay, then you can be reassured that they have a liability policy that protects you personally from any decisions that happen in that organization or any lawsuits against that organization. If the answer is no, they do not have that insurance, okay, then you are, and they and the rest of that board members are operating in a non-protected environment that does give you or present to you the opportunity, if indeed something bad happens at that facility and the board was directly responsible for making those decisions or knew about those quality issues and did nothing to stop or change, direct all that there could be some organizational or board liability in the absence of that insurance policy.
Well, that's why I had asked,
Okay.
because I thought that
For things that are directly related back to board decisions and board responsibilities. If the board had decided that I'm not going to replace the carpet and there have been 3 falls already and we're not going to replace the carpet, okay, and another person would fall perhaps, absent that policy, and the board decided not to do that, there could be some liability responsibility. Most organizations of any size or any credence, they all have directors and because they can't afford to be without an insurance policy protecting those individuals, or most of them won't serve.
You never said this, but like if I was on the board and I wanted to get rid of Deb, because I thought she was really, really bad, how do you do that in front of do you see what I'm saying? How, you've got your board sitting there, you know she needs to go. How do you bring that?
Well, she has a board position. She's the treasurer of the board, and boards will have bylaws for how often those positions, or how those positions are elected, how those are determined, whether through a nominating committee, how they're board approved, and the seats for those boards, okay, as well too. So you're going back and look at that structure of her board term, okay, and you're going back and look at what is the structure for replacement of those terms. Is her board term up? Do you want to get involved, maybe have a discussion with the executive committee, the leadership committee, about maybe having someone else run for that seat or continue on that seat? Go back and look at your process, your bylaws for how those seats are given. You may want to have small. If you find someone that you realize is just not the right person for the role, not able to adequately fill the role, not performing in a way that meets the needs. That's a discussion that you may want to have with the president of the board, with the administrator, the board exec, if you will, to begin talking about, do other folks see those problems? Is there an opportunity for us? And understanding that. It doesn't happen in a meeting like this, okay? It happens in conversation with the board exec, with the nominations committee, with the administrator, for understanding that whole process and what are our options within our bylaws. All right, Sarah, back to you in session.
Well, there's a lot more to discuss, like any other business. And who wants to adjourn the meeting?
Madam President, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
That's Leslie.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?